Okay. Hi, everybody. Want to start off by thanking you guys so much for spending your afternoon with us. This time of year is hectic, right, to say the least. So I really, value your time and value you guys showing up for this. Also, I asked them to make it super cold in here so you'd pay attention to me. So sorry about that. No, I'm just kidding. So today we're going to talk about creating a culture of possibilities. So my name's Laura Fischer. I'm a director of sales at Naviance. Been with the business for several years and have watched it go through quite an evolution around, really shifting the focus from looking at how do we best do college applications to really how do we look at a student and fulfill whole child readiness from a K through 12 perspective. So whenever we're starting these presentations out, I like to kind of think about a bigger question, right? What is the ultimate outcome of education? When you think about that, you probably think about standardized tests, right? Absolutely not. I really like Martin Luther King's definition, intelligence plus character. That's the goal of true education. And it's not standardized tests, and our students are so much more than a standardized test. And that's really the point of a lot of the work that we're doing at Naviance. Our company is also named Hobson's. That's the name of the company, so you probably hear us interchangeably. But really, what we're trying to do when we work with districts and when we work with schools is we're really shifting the conversation, right? So it's time for cultural change. We want to redefine how we measure student success and how we really define student success for each individual student. So that's really what we're going to focus on today. So this presentation is full of research, research from institutions and organizations all over the world. And it's always important to kind of, when we're thinking about the K-12 experience, to start from the very beginning. We know that poverty is the single greatest factor limiting student achievement globally in the United States, right? And there are many different factors of how that poverty comes into play with your students. Starting when these kids are very, very young, many students are entering into the schools in the United States at a disadvantage. There's the 30 million word gap that many of you might be familiar with. So students who are entering into school that come from low-income, poverty families, they're actually entering in at times with up to 30 million less words than students from high-income families. Okay, so the brain is a development organ, right? You have to work with it in order to form it and to develop it. Think about this like piano lessons, right? You have one student who gets piano lessons, has a piano at home, can practice. You have another student that's never seen a piano. You ask them both to do a piano recital. And that's the kind of difference we have with the students in every single building and the kind of issues that are you all are facing day to day. In addition to a linguistics gap, we also have issues around social and emotional development. Some of the studies that we actually follow very closely are around looking at students. This one in particular is about looking at students in Baltimore City, so that's near and dear to my heart. I've lived there for 10 years. So Baltimore City students, you take 9,000 students, right? And in Maryland, they have a metric for how they measure readiness to go into elementary school. And they measure readiness off three key factors, right? Personal self-regulation, social self-regulation, and approaches towards learning. So they asked the teachers then to rate these elementary school kids in with these three categories, and there's three different scores. There's developing, approaching, and fully ready. So just for this study, they kind of coupled it. So if you're developing or approaching, you're not ready. If you're fully ready, you're ready. Well, lo and behold, not ready students, predominantly male, low-income students, did not have a pre-K program. These are consistent factors again, across the United States. Although this study was done in Baltimore, we do find a lot of consistency. These students are going to be 80% more likely to be retained and held back. These students are going to be 80% more likely to require special education services, and up to 7 times more likely to be suspended and expelled. So this data is really important because if we take it at face value, right, no matter whether you look at ready and not ready being subjective, but kids who enter kindergarten behind in social emotional development are more likely to have negative school outcomes. These are the challenges that the kids come to you with, right? Not even the challenges that develop as they mature and they're in your buildings. So it's really important that we focus on these younger years. These younger years are notably ignored as far as the college and career readiness process goes, right? And when we say college and career ready and we address a 5-year-old, that seems strange, but there's a lot of things that we can do. And one of them is that we can encourage them to dream and aspire. So I wanted to just show you, just to get us in the mood here for student aspirations, these are the kinds of thoughts and feelings that are going through kids' heads in elementary school.
Hi, my name is James. I want to be a doctor because it has a lot of mathematics and science, and they're going to get it done.
An American historian.
Be a lawyer, a football player, or a basketball player. A scuba diver. A lawyer, because lawyers get to argue, and I'm really good at arguing.
So I want to be an astronaut.
A dentist. I'll say math, language arts, and math.
Science, but like specifically like astronomy, like that.
$10,000. Somewhere like 100,000 or something. Like $30,000. Like maybe a couple hundred. Just stay close. I would probably be
Well, if I always would sound like live on a space station. Someone tells me where my parents are.
I'm going to leave my mom and daddy.
Well, we know that changes, right? And I just think, it's important that you think about how kids are thinking about their futures at this young age. Ooh. Excuse me.
I have a teacher that I had in my senior year of high school, and he's one of those teachers that really took an interest, who wanted to know.
Sorry, our next video is getting ahead of us here. So it's important to think about how kids develop and what they're thinking about at these younger years, and really how we can impact them. So some of the partners that we're working with across the US right now, specifically focused on elementary ready, have given us some insight into kind of what they believe about this age group. So they see this time as a critical window, right? As sad as this might seem, some of them have described it as this is the only time they actually still believe in us. They look at the adults around them and they aspire to be like them. They want to know more. And so with this critical window, we know that there's a missed opportunity. And there's a missed opportunity because some of these kids, unfortunately, don't have the systems at home to have these conversations around who do they want to be, where do they want to go. And even if they do have the support system, many parents don't necessarily think they should be talking about that with their very young kids. What we've found is we want to encourage these kids in this age group to dream, right? We want pie in the sky dreams. You want to have a pizza parlor, you should get a pizza parlor, right? Curiosity is key. We want them to be curious about different jobs. We want them to have big time aspirations. Many research studies that we've looked at has actually identified that curiosity is sometimes a bigger indicator of academic achievement versus pure intelligence and talent. And I think anybody who has worked in the elementary age group knows that there's many characteristics that become more predominant and prevailing as far as student achievement goes than actual true intelligence. And this is what we're trying to do with Naviance in these younger years, is develop some of these social emotional pieces. So when we're talking about how do we talk to these kids, right? We talk to them about planning and possibilities. This is absolutely key. Teaching students how to set goals at a young age will help them develop persistence, grit, commitment, understanding that there are goals that are short-term and there are goals that are long-term, right? So also the college piece, I think it's really evident, right, when we ask these kids, how much does college cost? $100, right? It's kind of the same way like you ask them how old you are. I always ask elementary kids, like, how old do you think I am? And most of them say like 9 because I'm the height of a 9-year-old. So, that's kind of, their perceptions are really developing, but it's still good to start to have them get some awareness around, what real numbers look like. So, getting awareness, getting those elementary kids engaged, aspiring, that's half the battle. Because then they're going to flow into middle school, right? And we're going to have these grand aspirations that we've built, but then we're going to start developing a gap in these aspirations. We start to see that in middle school, this is actually a study from Chicago Public Schools, so we'll ask middle school students, how many of you want to go to college, right? 93% of the hands go up. We follow that same segment of middle schoolers. We say, okay, who actually enrolls in college? Only 44% of those kids. So they are talking about their intent is to go to college and their intent is to pursue some sort of degree outside of a high school diploma, but ultimately they're not getting there. So what's even worse, right, is when we look at this 44% who actually enroll, we know 1/3 of those kids will not make it. 1/3 of kids who enroll in college will not graduate. And that's a major problem, and that's often associated with retention, issues around finances, which is a main topic that we're talking about today, as well as just being academically prepared. So why is this happening? Why are kids just kind of dropping off when they're saying they want to go to college? So this is when our partnership with Gallup really comes in and the research we've done around student engagement. So there is an engagement cliff, right? Again, kids believe in us. They enter elementary school. 76% of kids are engaged. By the time they get to high school, and this is nationwide data, 44% of kids are actually engaged in school. So how do we stop that drop, right? How do we level that cliff out? And I just want to also give you some background on the actual poll itself, because I actually think this is very interesting. If any of you, are familiar with Gallup studies, they're doing a lot of work around engagement, understanding levels of hope, engagement, and well-being. And they're looking at these factors, and the way that the students kind of score on this engagement poll is that we give them statements, and they rank from a 1 to 10 on how much they agree with those statements. So some key findings outside of just those scores, right, on engagement are half of our students are hopeful, the other half are stuck and discouraged. So 95% of students say that they strongly agree with the statement, right? They're giving it 8s, 9s, 10s. I know I will graduate from high school. Yet only 75% of those kids actually graduate. So there's a belief that they're going to graduate, and that's also correlated with, I have at least one adult who cares about my future. I can find lots of ways around any problem. So hope is certainly an issue. Engagement is an issue, but what's even a bigger issue is those students who are not engaged. And there's a score with Gallup, right? You have engagement, you have not engaged, then you have actively undermining the teaching and learning process. And this is where we really get into issues. When we start to have scores around, my teacher makes me feel like my work is important, 0, 1. And those scores are coming from either a lack of praise, which I'm sure happens, but what Gallup actually feels stronger about is that there's a lack of an opportunity to do what they do best, right? And so this, again, kind of ties back to what we talked about with standardized tests. It is always a conversation around increase your GPA, increase your test score, increase this number. It's never about, hey, you like to build, let's focus on all these amazing things you can build, right? And so this is really the cultural shift that has to happen. Learning has to be developed and really surround the students' natural strengths and interests in order to really achieve true engagement. So overall, 2/3 of students are thriving and 1/3 is struggling or suffering. So there is some research that also comes out of this around, okay, so now we implement strategies with students where we focus and identify their strengths. We build curriculum where we can continue to tie into their strengths and coach them on their strengths. What happens? So 6% point increase in reading achievement, 8% increase in math achievement. This happens naturally. We're not talking about math or reading in any of these exercises. We're just engaging them deeper in their everyday learning and giving them a better understanding on how what they're doing today ties to the rest of their life. And that's an absolute key piece to this equation. And again, another reason why when we're talking about students' future, we have to start with the end in mind for their entire time in school. So walking students, when they get older, right, they dream, they have their pie in the sky aspirations. Now we focus them in middle school and high school, and we start talking about who are you? What do you care about? What are your talents? We flow that into, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And how can we show you how these talents, these things you're great at, tie to what you want to be? How can we build a path to get there? And then this is when the college piece comes in, or the vocational training piece, or whatever sort of preparation they're going to do to get into that career path. And then ultimately, have they had the checks and balances the whole time where they can go, yeah, I'm going to be successful. I know how much college costs. I'm going to be successful. I know how to balance my budget. I've taken the right courses that are going to lead me to success. So again, there's a lot of different factors that predict success in college, but some of them are ones that we're not necessarily looking at, right? It's always about SATs. That's entrance into college. That doesn't matter if they have to drop out, right? This is about true preparation. And we need to figure out what behaviors happen in, for instance, high school that correlate to successful outcomes in higher education. And that's really where the focus needs to shift. So there is a report, Predictors of Post-Secondary Success, right? It highlights that percent of absences, dual enrollment participation, AP exams, FAFSA completion, these are the things that actually matter as far as trying to figure out if a student's going to be successful. So AP success is a widely accepted indicator, right? It's prevalent on a lot of universities' entrance applications. Also going to be the way that, U.S. News will rank their top schools. So it's something that's very important on everybody's mind. But also, College Board and ACT, they've both shown extensive research that AP subject level benchmarks will directly correlate to the grades that the students get in college. So in addition, National Center for Post-Secondary Research, they looked at Florida schools specifically, and they found that students who participated in dual enrollment were ultimately better prepared, right, and were more successful. They statistically had a better likelihood to persist in college through a second semester than those who didn't experience that before they went on. So all this data kind of, is stuff we might be familiar with. Well, what we're not what we don't always kind of keep in the college readiness conversation is absences, right? So then we look at some data from Rhode Island, and we actually see that kids who are chronically absent in high school are having a lot of trouble persisting in college. So that's a factor that needs to be on the radar. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, wow, this is a lot of data points, right? How do we manage this kind of score sheet and figure out how we can track all these different pieces? In addition, community service is another indicator. So if you have community service requirements at your school, that's awesome. It seemed, from the research that we've seen, students who experience community service as part of a class requirement have higher odds of graduating from college. So again, lots of data points to manage and lots of pieces of the puzzle. So we can give you a great technology like Naviance, but that's just a very small part of the equation. So it is very much about cultural change. It's about adult behaviors, and it's about modifying the way you approach each child and the readiness process. And this is partnership. And I think this is really important because what we kind of, what we really have passion for is partnering with districts to make a major impact, and this doesn't happen immediately. These are long-term initiatives. And so this is kind of what you can expect when you work with a partner like Hobson's Naviance. I want to share with you, because I can go on and on about stories, but I want to share with you some work that some of our districts and schools across the country are doing in this partnership. So we have something called the Navient Summer Institute, which is a summer meeting that happens that we gather all power users for Naviance. And it's all of our sessions are primarily led by institutions, districts, or schools that have Naviance and are doing something super cool with it. We give out awards, and so I want to just play a video here, and you can see some of the amazing work that's happening nationwide.
Decatur Central High School is located in the southwest corner of Indianapolis. We are considered one of the smaller township schools that surround Indianapolis. We have approximately 6,000 students in our district, and Decatur Central has 1,700 students in the building. We're excited that the College Board just named us to their Gaston-Caperton Opportunity Honor Roll, and this is for providing extra opportunities for underrepresented students. Decatur Central High School has a very unique structure in that we have 5 small learning communities that are interest-based. And this allows for our students to choose a career path that is based on their own interest, which is key for our population because we have several students who are first-generation college goers. We have a new initiative this year called the College and Career Readiness course. We are excited about this. It is a 9 through 12 course that differentiates for each grade level all the things that we pulled from the counseling standards. And what was really great about this is we were able to work with the Naviance core curriculum. So we just embedded the Naviance core curriculum into our 9 through 12 curriculum, and it worked beautifully. When we first started, second semester of last year, our main goal was to have every student log in. We had 12,000 logins, a little over that. And we have far surpassed that goal this year in that we have over almost 30,000 logins this year. And what's important to note is that it's not just logging in and logging out. This College and Career Readiness course is 1 credit per semester. So students are logging in multiple times, participating in the lessons, and it's a credit so that their work is being checked, they're being graded, and all these lessons are really hitting home now because there is more at stake. The staff were very happy that the curriculum was going to be written in advance. They had the opportunity to preview the curriculum once the core team finished it through our modules in Canvas, which is our learning management system. The two curriculums with Naviance and the counseling standards work so beautifully together that we were easily able to differentiate those grade levels, and the teachers were very excited to have that completed for them. We only have 3 guidance counselors in our building, and we have 1,700 students. It's a pretty big spread. So having Naviance has really enabled our teachers to support our counselors in giving that information to students, that vital information to students that otherwise they just may not have gotten. The curriculum piece is just the icing on the cake for us because it embeds beautifully into the college and career readiness course that we've designed. I really feel more comfortable working with students in these counseling type fields than I ever have before.
Our school is a public high school. We have just over 1,500 students. We're in a rural setting, about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Phoenix. Initiatives that we've taken at Flagstaff High School include career and college readiness, which we've focused on quite a bit this last school year. We've looked at the Reach Higher campaign. We've focused on PBIS, positive behavior interventions and supports. And what we do is we use Naviance, to house basically a lot of those pieces. It was probably about 9 years ago when we actually brought Naviance onto our campus. And I remember thinking about, wow, this has a lot of features, where do we start? And I know that we started basically with our freshman class at that time, and we used the learning styles inventory, the do what you are, and just kind of broke into it a little bit at a time. And Naviance has helped our students in a myriad of ways. We use the 4-year plan with them as freshmen, and that allows them to look at the trajectory of their high school experience, what courses they need to take in order to obtain their post-secondary goals. We use the learning styles inventory. We use the videos from Road Trip Nation, which has been a nice new feature of Naviance. About 8 years ago, they actually, when we were renovating the school, the administration had a room specifically built for the counseling department called the College and Career Center, where we can give our lessons, where we can have representatives from different agencies come out and speak with students. And one of the big things that we did, probably, I would say about 6 years ago, was when Naviance had the capability to transmit transcripts electronically. That was huge for our school. Our registrar just said Naviance was the best thing she'd ever seen because it changed her job from, hand delivering and writing out and mailing out transcripts to every school to being able to send them in a large batch. I think Naviance has given us a common vocabulary to use. It's helped us with our educational career and action plan. It's helped us with our career and college ready initiatives or Reach Higher. And so it's become not just this enigma of, what is Naviance, what is this thing to, it's something that is ingrained within our language in our school and with our students.
So those are just some examples of some of the great work that's being done, across the U.S. For those of you who don't have, a great amount of awareness of what Naviance is, we just hit the 35% mark. So 35% of U.S. high school students use Naviance, which is really exciting. Last year we got our numbers back on eDocs. We sent 30 million documents electronically to colleges and universities. So this has really become a very large movement for many schools and districts across the U.S. And I think that, I referenced partnership before. This is really very much about putting students at the center point of everything that we do. Technology is one thing, but the way that the adults interact with the students and the support that they give the students is absolutely critical. As a business, we really value educators, counselors, administrators, your opinions, and the work that you do. We have a professional services staff, trainers and consultants that work with our districts and schools. And I think the stats are about 85% of those individuals come out of the classroom or come out of a school building to work with us, for us. So, you know, education is the center point of what we do, right? We have great passion for helping students no matter what they look like, where they're from. And that's really evident just in our culture of our business. We do these presentations often, and what we ended up kind of evolving into is a lot of our product managers giving me stories and telling me, you know, make sure you say this when you're here, make sure you say this when you're here. So our product managers, they end up kind of running the vision of each part of Naviance, making sure that the software is built, that, you know, the trainers are equipped to deliver the training. They ended up really kind of getting to the point where they wanted to make a little bit of a thank you video around the work that they do. And so we've started to incorporate this in presentations just so that you can get an understanding of how deep-rooted this is within us, within our culture as a business. So, you know, to all of you in the room, this is a little bit of a thank you for the work that you do. Because ultimately, the work that you've done enables us to do the work that we do.
I'm a teacher that I had in my senior year of high school, and he's one of those teachers that really took an interest, who wanted to know us as individuals and spent time getting to know us, and in a lot of cases our friends and families. And he was my teacher on 9/11 when I was actually in his class when we were watching the news coverage. You know, I think he very much thought how upset and affected I was by that event, and also used some of that, I think some of that concern and emotion to kind of fuel my understanding of the whole situation, even though at the time what was unfolding was so hard to process, and ultimately led to my interest and my decision to major in political science.
I went to public school in India, and I was an average USC classroom. We had a new English teacher in grade 7, Mrs. D'Souza, and the reason I think I made a special connection with her was because she called me out a couple of times in the classroom. Maybe I didn't do my homework, or my shoes were not polished, whatever would be the reason. So she pushed me to explore, to have new experiences. I understood myself a little better in terms of my strengths and weaknesses. So that is where she really helped me go deep into what I really like to do, what I really want to do. So if I look back, I've spent the last 16 years in education, and I don't regret a single moment of it.
I was a confused student like many students. I sat through Dr. Casto, my college counselor's office, a number of times and really trying to find self-discovery and what do I want to get out of college. And Dr. Casto took me out of my comfort zone and really took me through a number of colleges based on locale, based on location, athletic events, different pieces. Even important was my major, and took the time to really get to know me and really allow me the opportunity to express what I was looking for, and helped match me with a college that was most appropriate for what I was looking for. And decided to go to an East Coast large institution that really shaped me to the adult that I am today. I am really happy and proud for what Dr. Casto did with me.
I grew up in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and one of the most influential mentors in my life was Mr. Gabe. He was my deaf advisor and also the teacher for my elective business classes. My dad was a chemical engineer, and up until that point, I had only really considered a career in the sciences, but also hadn't developed any real affinity, just sort of coasted along like a lot of high school students. Mr. Kabe took a vested interest and really built a personal connection and introduced me to a whole new world of opportunities in the fields of entrepreneurship and marketing. From that, I discovered the career path that I'm on today and an area that I'm truly passionate about.
When I was in the 8th grade, my best friend Jennifer was really depressed, and I knew that, and her parents knew that, and she was going to therapy for it. But unfortunately, it resulted in her committing suicide. And at the time, I didn't really understand everything that was going on in the background, all these adults at the school trying to manage the tragedy. But we did know as kids that there was this list of kids at risk, and that I was at the top of the list. And so no one would ever really leave me alone by myself. And there was this moment after school one day where I was sitting outside waiting for my mom to pick me up, and my favorite teacher, Mr. Aiken, came and sat next to me, and I remember thinking like, oh gosh, like even he can't trust me to sit alone by myself. And then he looked over at me and he said, "You're gonna be okay." And it was the first time that I really felt like an adult was there because they cared about me and because they knew that I was going to do good things and that I was going to get through it, not because they were worried about me or felt like they needed to save me. And it was such a simple moment, and I don't know that he even realized the impact that it had on me, but it's something that I still think about to this day, and it was a big turning point for me.
So we end the presentation there. Those of you who might use Naviance, it's important that you know from us as a partner that we truly value you and that we really appreciate the work that you do. These are your product managers who are spending every single day building the product and keeping the product sustainable so that we can keep impacting students. And so just wanted to share that message with you all. Joe Green, who popped up there, who told the story about how he was a little lost. He's still a little lost. He has 5 master's degrees, so we're still working on him, but at least he loves school. So that's really the end of my presentation, what I had for you today. Didn't want to take up your entire lunch, but thank you all for your attention and support.